The waiting room of Riverside Medical Center smelled like artificial lavender and the faint metallic undertone of sanitizer. Marcus Chen sat in a plastic chair, clutching his insurance card like a talisman, watching the clock above the reception desk tick toward to 47 p.m. His appointment was at 2:45 p.m., 2 minutes late. He hated being late, hated the feeling of being out of control, hated how his anxiety made him feel, like a nervous wreck before something as routine as a physical examination. At 34 years old, Marcus had learned to mask his nervousness well. The tailored navy blazer helped. So did the careful way he'd combed his dark hair that morning, the clean shave, the subtle cologne. In the corporate world of data analytics, where he'd spent the last decade climbing the ladder, appearance was a currency. It bought credibility, respect, trust, but in a doctor's office, where he sat stripped of the armor of professionalism, that currency meant nothing. Marcus Chen. A voice called out warm, professional. It's utterly cheerful. He looked up to find a nurse in colorful scrubs decorated with tiny stethoscopes, smiling at him. Her name tag? Read Jasmine. She had the kind of presence that made waiting rooms feel less like purgatory. Right here, Marcus said, standing quickly, smoothing his blazer out of pure habit. Come on back, hun. Let's get you checked in. The nurse led him through the maze of corridors to an examination room, painted the color of calm oatmeal. She took his blood pressure, slightly elevated. No surprise, noted his weight, his height, his medical history. All the standard rituals of preventive care. The things his corporate wellness program required annually. The things he'd been putting off for 18 months. The doctor will be right in, Jasmine said. Closing the door behind her, Marcus sat on the examination table, paper crinkling beneath him. He'd changed into the gown they'd provided, a humbling garment that made him feel exposed despite covering most of his body. He looked at himself in the small mirror mounted on the wall. Dark eyes that looked tired. A face that showed the weight of late nights and weekend work. Cheekbones that had become more prominent since his breakup with David last year, a relationship that had ended not with drama, but with the slow erosion of compatibility, the gradual realization that they wanted different futures. That was 18 months ago. Since then, his life had become efficiently structured. Work, gym, dinner, alone at his apartment, or with colleagues at restaurants where the noise prevented real conversation. He'd convinced himself this was contentment. He'd convinced himself he didn't need the vulnerability of another relationship. The knock came just as Marcus was contemplating the motivational poster of a sunrise taped to the wall. Marcus. I'm Dr. Ethan Wright. The door swung open, and the world shifted slightly on its axis. Marcus would later struggle to articulate exactly what happened in that moment. In the language of dramatic fiction, it was love at first sight. In the language of neuroscience, it was a cascade of neurochemicals triggered by an unexpected stimulus. In the language of his own heart, it was a door opening that he'd locked and double-bolted. Years ago, the man standing in the doorway was tall at least. 6'2" with the kind of natural athleticism that suggested early morning runs or early morning gym sessions. His skin was a warm honey brown, his eyes were an unexpected shade of amber, and his hair was carefully faded at the sides while longer on top, styled with a precision that spoke to someone who cared about details. His white coat was crisp, his stethoscope hung casually around his neck, and he carried himself with the kind of easy confidence that only came from genuine competence in one's field. But what struck Marcus most was the smile. It was genuine, warm, and it reached those amber eyes. It was the kind of smile that suggested this man actually liked people, actually cared about their well-being. In Marcus's experience, doctors smiled because their training required them to. This man smiled like he meant it. Hi. Marcus Dr. Wright extended his hand, and Marcus shook it, acutely aware of the texture of his palm, the warmth of his touch, the way their eyes held contact just a fraction of a second longer than professional necessity demanded. I see you're due for your annual physical. Let's take a look at you. Examination itself was professional, thorough, and utterly mortifying. Marcus tried to think about quarterly earnings reports and server maintenance, schedules, anything to distract from the reality of being vulnerable in front of the most attractive human being he'd encountered in recent memory. But Dr. Wright had an ease about him that gradually eroded Marcus's anxiety. "Any recent health concerns?" Dr. Wright asked, listening to Marcus's heart and lungs. "The usual stress," Marcus said. "Work-related." "Mostly." Dr. Wright smiled. "I hear you. I went into medicine partly to escape the corporate world, and I found out you just trade one kind of stress for another." He positioned his hands to check Marcus's abdomen. "Tell me if anything hurts." Nothing hurt. Everything felt heightened. Marcus could smell the subtle bergamot scent of Dr. Wright's cologne, could feel the focused attention of his examination, could hear the gentle professionalism in his voice. "Everything looks good," Dr. Wright said, stepping back. "Your heart rate is excellent. Blood pressure's elevated, but that's not uncommon in appointment settings. Do you meditate? Do any yoga?" "I work out," Marcus said, then added, "but that's mostly to combat stress, not for the meditation aspect. You might try adding some mindfulness practice. Even 10 minutes a day can make a difference." Dr. Wright made notes on his tablet. "How's your social life? Do you have a good support system?" The question caught Marcus off guard. It was the kind of question that suggested Dr. Wright actually saw him as a whole person, not just a body passing through his examination room. "I have colleagues," Marcus heard himself say. "Friends, I guess. Though I don't see them as much as I probably should." Dr. Wright nodded thoughtfully. "Relationships are crucial for health, not just romantic ones. People need connection. It's as vital as exercise." He set the tablet down. "Your blood work looks fantastic, by the way. All your levels are in perfect ranges. You should feel proud of that." Marcus did feel something then, a warmth that had nothing to do with the examination room's temperature. "One more thing," Dr. Wright said, and his tone shifted slightly, becoming more casual, more personal. "I'm going to be transparent with you because I think transparency matters. Your blood pressure elevation, I don't think it's clinical. I think you're carrying tension somewhere deep. Maybe you could tell me more about what's going on in your life." Marcus found himself looking at this man, this beautiful, competent, genuinely caring man, and feeling the walls he'd built start to develop hairline fractures. The last person who'd asked him to really talk about what was going on had been his therapist, and even then, he'd spent most sessions discussing work problems rather than his actual emotional state. Marcus paused. "I'm okay. Or I've convinced myself I am." Dr. Wright's expression softened. He pulled up the rolling chair and sat, putting himself at eye level with Marcus. It was a small gesture, but it demolished any remaining pretense of clinical distance. "Those are sometimes the same thing," Dr. Wright said quietly. "The convincing ourselves part becomes so practiced we forget there's a difference." Something in Marcus's chest cracked open. He looked away, afraid that his eyes might betray the months of accumulated exhaustion he'd been studiously ignoring. "I had a relationship that ended," Marcus said slowly. "About 18 months ago. I've been efficient since then. Work, exercise, eating the right things. Everything on schedule." "That sounds lonely," Dr. Wright said. There was no judgment in his voice, only observation, only compassion. Marcus felt his throat tighten. "It's safer," Marcus said finally. Dr. Wright was quiet for a moment. "Then safety is important, but so is living." When Marcus left the appointment 45 minutes later, he had a prescription for blood pressure medication he didn't need, and a recommendation to try meditation. But what he carried out with him, what lodged itself in his mind and heart, was the image of Dr. Wright walking him to the door, placing a hand briefly on his shoulder, and saying, "Take care of yourself, Marcus. And seriously, reach out to your friends. Let people in a little." That night, for the first time in 18 months, Marcus didn't work late. He sat in his apartment with the sunset painting the walls gold and amber. And he thought about a man with kind eyes who saw right through his carefully constructed armor. He thought about what it might mean to live. Rather than just exist, he thought about the next time he might have an appointment. Marcus made it exactly 7 days before he found a reason to call back in too. Riverside Medical Center. "I'm just calling too," Clarify something about my appointment, he told Jasmine, who answered with her characteristic cheer. The doctor mentioned a follow-up on my blood pressure readings. Should I schedule that? Or was he just suggesting I monitor it at home? It was a transparent excuse, and part of Marcus was mortified by his own transparency. But another part of him, the part that had come alive during his appointment with Dr. Wright, simply didn't care. Let me check the notes, Jasmine said. A pause. Then, I'm not seeing a mandatory follow-up here, but I can absolutely schedule you if you want to come back in. The doctor did say to reach out if you had questions. Maybe a week from now? Marcus heard himself say. Same time of day? When Marcus hung up the phone, he felt like a teenager engineering a chance meeting with a crush, which, humiliatingly, was essentially what he was doing. A 34-year-old man with a successful career, conducting himself with the subtlety of a high school senior. But over the next 7 days, something shifted in Marcus. He did try meditation, following a guided app in the mornings before work. He called to colleagues he actually liked and suggested drinks after work. He started saying yes to invitations instead of fabricating reasons to work late. Life began to taste less like obligation and more like possibility, and beneath it all, like an undertow, was the anticipation of seeing Dr. Wright again. The second appointment came around on a Thursday that felt engineered by the universe to be perfect. Cool autumn weather. Golden light. The kind of day that made being alive feel like a gift rather than a responsibility. Marcus. Jasmine greeted him like an old friend. Back so soon? Everything okay? Just wanted to follow up on some things, Marcus said, trying to sound casual. The meditation, the blood pressure stuff. Jasmine grinned and Marcus realized with mortified certainty that she knew exactly what was happening. She had that look women got when they'd figured out something they found amusing. He was back in the examination room, in the waiting gown when the knock came. The same knock as before, but this time Marcus's heart hammered with a knowledge of what was coming. Marcus. Dr. Wright's smile was genuine, delighted even. Back so soon? Is everything all right? Fine, actually, Marcus said. The truth tumbled out before he could stop it. Better. I took your advice about the meditation, and I've been spending more time with friends. Dr. Wright's whole face transformed with pleasure. He pulled up the rolling chair again, a gesture that was becoming familiar, becoming something Marcus looked forward to. That's excellent, Dr. Wright said. How are you feeling? Better. More present, I think. They talked for nearly 20 minutes about meditation practices, about loneliness in the modern age, about how even people with good lives could find themselves in isolation if they weren't intentional about connection. It was the kind of conversation Marcus never had any more real. Vulnerable, honest. Dr. Wright listened the way people rarely listened. Like what Marcus was saying genuinely mattered to him. There's a meditation group that meets at the community center, Dr. Wright said at one point. I actually go sometimes, on Tuesday evenings. They're a friendly group. If you ever want to try it with a few other people, instead of just the app, it's a good environment. Marcus's heart rate elevated and he was acutely aware that Dr. Wright would notice if he checked his blood pressure again. But the doctor didn't reach for the cuff. Instead, he waited for Marcus's response with those amber eyes, patient and kind. Maybe I will, Marcus said carefully. Yeah. Dr. Wright looked genuinely pleased. Tuesday at 7. The community center on Maple Street. I usually grab coffee with a few people after if you wanted to join. It wasn't quite an invitation. It was carefully wrapped in the context of a group activity, a meditation group, something deniable, something safe. But underneath, Marcus understood what Dr. Wright was offering. An opportunity, a possibility. I'd like that, Marcus said. Dr. Wright smiled, then seemed to remember his professional role. He stood, the moment shifting back into medical territory. Well, everything looks great. Keep up with the meditation. Keep spending time with people you care about. And we'll see you at your regular appointment in 12 months. Unless something changes. Unless something changes, Marcus repeated. But everything had already changed. Marcus just didn't know it yet. The Tuesday evening complication, Marcus arrived at the community center meditation group with his heart in his throat. his mind cycling through catastrophic scenarios. What if Dr. Wright hadn't meant it? What if this was just standard doctor-patient kindness? What if Marcus showed up and seemed like a stalker? What if Dr. Wright was sitting on a meditation cushion, eyes closed, looking peaceful and luminous in the soft light of the community center's meditation room? He opened his eyes as Marcus entered and smiled in a way that suggested he'd been waiting, that he was genuinely glad Marcus had come. The meditation group was led by a serene woman named Patricia, who guided them through 45 minutes of mindfulness practice. Marcus spent approximately 30 of those minutes acutely aware of Dr. Wright's presence 2 cushions away. His breathing, the peaceful expression on his face. He meditated with the focus of someone for whom meditation was clearly a meaningful practice, not a wellness trend. Afterward, 7 people from the group walked to a nearby coffee shop. Dr. Wright naturally positioned himself next to Marcus, and by the time they were sitting at a high-top table with various hot drinks, Marcus felt like he was floating slightly outside his body, amazed that this was actually happening. "So you're a data analyst?" Dr. Wright asked, after Marcus had briefly mentioned his work. "Analyst, manager, strategist, depends on the day," Marcus said. "Basically, I help companies understand their data and make better decisions based on what the numbers tell us." It's incredible. "We could use that in healthcare." Dr. Wright took a sip of his black coffee, and Marcus found himself noticing the shape of his mouth, the way he held the cup, the casual grace of his movements. "I spent my first 5 years out of med school doing everything by instinct and experience, when I'm sure there was data-driven strategies that could have helped my patients more effectively." They talked through the evening, the kind of conversation where ours disappear because the connection is real and the interest is genuine. The other group members eventually left, and still Marcus and Dr. Wright sat, talking about medicine and data and the philosophy of how to help people. They talked about their families. Dr. Wright's parents were first-generation immigrants from Ghana, his father a physician, his mother an engineer. They talked about their education, their paths, their choices, and nowhere in that conversation did either of them cross a professional boundary. But everywhere beneath the words was an undercurrent of possibility. When Dr. Wright walked Marcus to his car at nearly midnight, the autumn air was cool against Marcus's skin. "I'm glad you came tonight," Dr. Wright said quietly. "Me too," Marcus said. "Marcus, ... Dr. Wright paused, seeming to wrestle with something internal. "I need to be honest with you about something. Professional ethics, patient-doctor relationships, all of that. If I'm reading the situation correctly, and if what I'm feeling is mutual, then we're in a bit of complicated territory." Marcus's breath caught. He waited. "I really like you, Doctor," Wright continued. "Not in a clinical way. Not as a doctor likes his patient. In a way that's making me want to refer you to another physician in my practice. Because I think we could potentially be something, and I don't want that to be compromised by my professional obligation to you." It was the most romantic thing anyone had said to Marcus in years, and it was wrapped up in complication and ethics and the inherent difficulty of 2 people who wanted each other but came together in a context that demanded care. "I like you too," Marcus said quietly. "Even knowing this is complicated can make it uncomplicated," Dr. Wright said. "I can have you transferred to Dr. Patterson. She's excellent. And then we can see what this is, without any conflict." Marcus nodded, understanding the integrity behind the suggestion, loving him a little more for it. "Okay," Marcus said. "Let's do that, yeah." "Yeah," double quotes. Dr. Wright smiled then, a real smile, unguarded and beautiful. And then, slowly, giving Marcus his time to pull away if he wanted to, he leaned in and kissed him. It was soft and warm and tasted like black coffee and possibility. It was the kind of kiss that felt like the beginning of something neither of them had planned for, but both of them needed. When they pulled apart, Dr. Wright rested his forehead against Marcus's. "I've never done this before," Dr. Wright said softly. "Felt this way about someone. This quickly." "Neither have I," Marcus said, and it was true. Whatever this was with David, his ex, had been comfortable and compatible. This was different. This was like finding a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing. "We'll take it slow," Dr. Wright said. "And we'll do things right," Marcus agreed. But as he drove home that night, Marcus knew that whatever slow looked like, whatever doing things right entailed, his life had fundamentally shifted. He wasn't just existing anymore. He was living, and Dr. Ethan Wright was the reason. The first 3 months of Marcus and Ethan's relationship unfolded like a story written by someone who understood the power of anticipation. They didn't rush. They built something methodical and deliberate. The opposite of Marcus's impulse toward efficiency and control. First came the coffee dates, casual, public, a way to spend time together without intensity. Then came the walks through Riverside Park, where the autumn leaves turned the world into shades of gold and crimson. Then came the night Ethan cooked dinner at his apartment, a modest but elegant space that spoke to his character. The kitchen smelled like roasted garlic and fresh herbs, and Ethan moved through it with the same competence he brought to everything else. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," Ethan said as they waited for pasta to cook. Marcus thought about the question seriously. "I didn't become a data analyst because I'm passionate about data," he admitted. "I became one because I'm terrified of ambiguity. Data is clean, it's provable. If you follow the rules of logic, you get reliable answers. The real world isn't like that." Ethan stirred the sauce. "Considering this, that makes sense. You were trying to make life less scary by reducing it to manageable pieces." "Exactly," Marcus said. "And it worked. For a while. But it also meant I stopped really living, just kind of arranging my life like spreadsheets." "Until you got an annual physical," Ethan said with a smile. "Until my doctor told me I was lonely," Marcus corrected. Ethan set down the spoon and pulled Marcus close. They'd kissed many times since that first night in the parking lot, but the sensation still sent electricity through Marcus's entire body. Ethan's hands were warm, one settling on Marcus's waist, the other gently cradling his face. "I'm glad you listened," Ethan whispered, as winter approached and the days grew shorter. They began to navigate the practical elements of their relationship. They met each other's friends. Ethan introduced Marcus to his meditation circle, where Patricia, the meditation instructor, took one look at them together and said, "Oh, good. I'm so glad that worked out. I could see it from a mile away." Introduced Ethan to his work colleagues, watching with secret satisfaction as his friends registered that Marcus had somehow acquired an exceptionally attractive boyfriend who was also smart and kind. By the time December arrived, carrying with it the first serious snow of the season, Marcus and Ethan had moved from dating to partnership. Ethan had a key to Marcus's apartment. Marcus had learned Ethan's coffee order, his favorite songs, the way his face softened when he talked about his patients, the particular vulnerability in his eyes when he spoke about his parents' expectations for him. To marry a woman and give them grandchildren. It was on a snowy evening in late December, 3 months after their first kiss, that everything shifted again. Marcus was at Ethan's apartment, and Ethan was in the shower. Marcus was looking through Ethan's bookshelf, a habit he'd developed. You could tell so much about a person from their books when he noticed a leather journal tucked behind a row of medical textbooks. He wasn't the kind of person to read someone else's private journal. Privacy was sacred, particularly in a relationship. But as his hand brushed the journal while looking for a specific book, it fell open. Marcus caught it instinctively, and the page it opened to had today's date written at the top in Ethan's neat handwriting. He should have closed it. He absolutely should have closed it. But his eyes caught on his own name. "Marcus came over tonight. He's reading on my couch right now, completely absorbed in that book he brought, and I find myself just watching him. This man who walked into my clinic 3 months ago with elevated blood pressure and a heart that had learned how to be careful, how not to feel. And now he's here, and he's smiling at something in that book, and I'm thinking about forever. Not in a careful way, in a completely terrified, absolutely certain way. I never thought I'd feel this. Never thought I'd want this someone to build a life with, someone to come home to, someone whose presence just makes everything feel right." Marcus's hands trembled as he held the journal. He read on. "He's never said he loves me. I haven't said it either because I want to mean it completely, and I'm already there, but I want to say it at the right moment, when it's real and solid and something we're both ready for. He's still healing from his last relationship, still learning how to be vulnerable. I can wait. I can be patient. Can wait for him to understand that this is real. Marcus stood frozen, the journal open in his hands, his heart performing an irregular rhythm that would have concerned the medical professional. Ethan was when he wasn't busy being the man Marcus was falling in love with. Marcus. He turned to find Ethan in the doorway, damp from the shower, eyes immediately registering what had happened. The color drained from his face. "I'm sorry," Marcus said quickly. "It fell. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't mean to. It's okay," Ethan said, but he sounded uncertain. "It's not," Marcus said. "It's your private journal. I violated your privacy." Ethan came further into the room. He was vulnerable in a way Marcus rarely saw him, no longer wearing the doctor's authority, the competent professional mask. Just Ethan, scared that he'd been too much too fast. "What did you read?" Ethan asked quietly. Marcus could lie, could say he only saw a few words, but Ethan deserved honesty. They'd built this on something better than lies, enough to know that you think about forever. "With me?" Marcus's voice was unsteady. "That you love me?" Ethan's expression crumpled. "I wasn't trying to pressure you. I know you needed time, and I wasn't going to say it until you were ready, and I'm ready," Marcus said. Ethan stopped mid-sentence. "What?" "I've been ready for about a month," Marcus continued. "I was just terrified. Because loving you means being vulnerable, means being this person who can be hurt. I spent so long convinced that control was the same as safety." He set the journal down carefully on the table. "But 3 months ago, I walked into a clinic for an annual physical, and my doctor told me I was lonely, and he was right. And then that same doctor became the person who's teaching me how to live, how to be in the world, not just observing it from a distance." Ethan was watching him with such intensity, such hope. "I love you," Marcus said. The words felt enormous and simple at the same time. "I should have said it already, but I'm saying it now. I love you, Ethan." Ethan closed the distance between them and kissed him with everything he'd been holding back. It was soft and deep and tasted like relief and certainty and the promise of something real. When they broke apart, Ethan rested his forehead against Marcus's, breathing like he'd run a great distance. "Say it again," Ethan whispered. "I love you," Marcus said. "Again." "I love you," Ethan smiled. "I love you too. I have for months. I'll love you for the rest of my life if you'll let me." Later, after they'd moved to the bedroom, after they'd found each other in the darkness, after bodies and hearts had aligned in the way they'd been dancing toward since that first appointment, Marcus lay against Ethan's chest and felt the steady beat of his heart beneath his ear. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. "Anything. When you first examined me that day, did you know? Did you feel anything?" Ethan's laugh was soft, surprised. "Honestly, not immediately. You were nervous, very professional, very closed off. But as I talked to you, as I saw you start to relax a little," he paused. "There was something. A moment when you talked about your relationship ending, and I saw this flash of hurt beneath all your careful control. And I remember thinking, I want to help that person open up. I want to be someone they trust, and now you are," Marcus said. "Now I am," Ethan agreed. Marcus walked into Riverside Medical Center on a warm June afternoon, carrying the leather journal that had started this chapter of their story. Ethan was in his office, reviewing patient files for the afternoon. "Hi," Marcus said, closing the door behind him. "Are you in trouble with your boss if I distract you?" Ethan's face lit up. The best kind of trouble. Marcus settled on the edge of Ethan's desk. "I have something for you. A gift." He handed Ethan a box, wrapped in elegant silver paper. Inside was another journal, this one unmarked, waiting to be filled. But there was also a small envelope. Ethan opened it to find a card with 2 words written in Marcus's careful handwriting. "Your turn." Ethan looked up, confused. "I want you to write about us," Marcus explained. "All of it. How you felt when I walked into your clinic. What you thought about me. What you thought about us. And then..." Marcus took a breath. "And then I'll do the same. And we'll keep these journals, and someday when we're old and the days blur together, we can remember exactly how this felt. How we found each other." Ethan stood and pulled Marcus into a kiss that was gentle and reverent, full of love and promise. "Marry me," Ethan said. Marcus laughed. It's supposed to be a question. Marry me? Ethan amended, but he was already laughing too. Yes, Marcus said. Yes to that. Yes to the journals. Yes to all of it. As they held each other in that small office in Riverside Medical Center. Marcus thought about the incredible fortune of timing, of walking into the right room on the right day and finding not just medical care, but a person who saw him, really saw him, and loved him anyway. A doctor who had helped him heal not through medication or diagnosis, but through genuine human connection. The doctor couldn't believe his eyes during that first checkup, Marcus thought, because he was looking at someone who'd learned how to keep his heart closed. And I couldn't believe my eyes either, because I was looking at the person who would teach me how to open it again.